Hello, my name is Joey Only and welcome to my YouTube channel. Usually I talk about weather. Today the weather is crappy. A little bit of snow trying to come down in Wells. Today's episode is called The Problem with Martial Arts. This is a philosophical video, of course. My philosophy is painted by Wing Chun Kung Fu, 20 years. I'm probably average. I'm not here to claim that I'm some Wing Chun master. I'm also philosophically colored by Miyamoto Musashi in the Book of Five Rings, Go-Rin No-Sho, the classic Japanese book to strategy written by the famous samurai Miyamoto Musashi. So those are my two things that have really over my life have guided me into what kind of person or martial artist I was going to become. So the problem with martial arts, there's a lot of them, and these are philosophical problems, and I believe that my system answers some of these things. So I stick to my system, and that's where I'll come up with problem number one is relativism, which is a problem of post-modernity that we have in civilization, in Western civilization, which is there is no truth. Everything's equal, everything's relative. If it works for you, that's good. And now we have schools of martial arts called mixed martial arts that emphasize that exact thing. Just pick what you want and be big and tough and go and fight and win tournaments. And this is what people are looking towards as martial arts these days. That's kind of the looking. So the next problem I see is tough guys. I don't think tough guys are good for martial arts. I'll give you a good example that Wing Chun's legend comes from Ning Wei and Yin Wing Chun, and they invented this art these women did, and it was to help small people beat tough guys. And I want to encourage you to consider that your martial art needs to be accessible. It needs to be available for small people to try to win battles against big people. So if your martial art is being represented as a tough guy sport, it's going to keep a lot of people out of it. Your toughness is going to make up for lack of technique. Relativism, I come back to that, where I do have an open form of how I do play in Wing Chun. That's not necessarily always Wing Chun. I might be dancing, I might move, I might do things that aren't necessarily Wing Chun, except I'll come back to Wing Chun every time as soon as I make contact, right? So I may have some openness, but as soon as I need to close my line down, I'm going to go back to what I know is my system, my Wing Chun. My system isn't just a way to fight. It's a way to move through the forest. It's a way to balance on one leg. It's a way to do things in my daily life, to be aware, to be sensitive to what's going on around me. My martial art has taught me to widen my sensitivity. If your martial art isn't giving you a greater sense of sensitivity, there's a problem with that. We need to be sensitive. Those are three things so far I think are the problem with martial arts. Movements. You think you know something because you can go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Movements being separate from your everyday how you do things, right? So as I was just saying, my martial art colors everything I do. So I don't go into a fighting stance when it's time to fight. My fighting stance is how I do everything. Incorporated into my total being, my martial art is how I do everything. It's not a separate thing from my daily life. It's not there's Joey and then there's fighting Joey. There's Joey who, if he's positioned properly and everything he's doing, is going to have success a very high percentage of the time. Another problem I have with martial arts is schools. I mean, this sounds ridiculous because I'm trying to start a new tradition here in Wells, British Columbia of Wing Chun Kung Fu, the Wells Wing Chun tradition, the Caribou Kung Fu Association. I don't know. I haven't come up with what I'm going to name it yet. I don't even have students yet. Wing Chun is taught directly one-on-one. It's between two people. So when I say I have a problem with schools, and I have a problem with movements, I have a problem with 30 people going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. After completing those 27 movements, you get a belt, and now you think you've learned something. What you're paying for at the school is the belt. And each time you progress, you pay for a belt. So you can show off that you've gained some rank or think you know something now because you have a belt. The belt does not necessarily show how good you are at your system and how fast, how technically proficient you are. It just says you finish the movements, you get the next belt. The teacher's always going to hold back. You can only teach 27 people, 27 movements. Now you've got your white belt. The teacher's always going to hold back. So you're not going to learn fully. You're not going to have the close engagement one-on-one that you have with Wing Chun with your teacher. Wing Chun should not be taught in a school to 20 students. I mean, it can happen. There could be reason that it works, especially if students are pairing off for Chi Sao and energy games and things. People hold on to their school as being a source of meaning towards them in their martial art, and it replaces the need to necessarily be really, 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 really good. It will take longer in a school setting to get really, really, really good. Another problem I have with martial arts, modern martial arts, is injuries. People, and I was in jiu-jitsu and grappling over 20 years ago back in university, and I would get injured training. And I did learn, I got better, and those injuries got less and less. However, they still kept happening. And after 3 years of learning jiu-jitsu and grappling, my talent had grown this much. When I came to Wing Chun, my talent in 6 months grew that much. I didn't get injured once training with Robert. You shouldn't have to get injured in training. There should be no reason, unless you decide you two want to fight. Okay, well, that's cool. I mean, do that. But I mean, generally, all of our training in Wing Chun is going to be very soft, very gentle. You know, we're going to start our first Chi Sao with, I'm going to put an arm out. You're going to put one on top. I'm going to try to hit. You're going to jut down. If you're too strong, I'm going to come back over. Eventually, we'll work up to 2 hands and rolling them and trying to feel each other's energy, trying to get more sensitive, trying to get better in our positioning, trying to perfect the small things. Another problem with martial arts is overcomplication. Too many movements, too many big movements, too many useless movements. Just because you know 1,000 movements doesn't mean you're going to win a fight, or doesn't mean that you're going to be able to run through the forest in the dark on 1 foot balanced. Doesn't mean you're going to have really embodied the depth of what being a martial artist can bring you to. In Wing Chun, we have very few movements. I mean, really, most of the system is very simple. Your Silam Tao, if you become proficient at the very first set of your system. So you have tons of movements. Well, Wing Chun, we don't. I mean, a lot of really good Wing Chun students, for example, Bruce Lee, only learned the Silam Tao, the first form. That's not many movements. It's a combination of how are you going to stand, how are you going to punch. It's going to teach you some different blocks. Very simple stuff. Very simple blocks. Some palm strikes. If you use your imagination, you get good at these things, then things like finger thrusts that come later in Wing Chun will just become part of your go-tos, because so much just flows out of that basic stance of the Wing Chun system, the basic movements, so very small things, but they take a long time to get good. You know, for example, wrong, 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 wrong. Center. Not centered. Centered. You know, it took me a long time to just be able to have that center line be there every time I go to hit, I go to move, I go to touch, I go to engage, I go to run through the forest, I go to climb a mountain, I go to, when I'm playing hockey and there's two guys coming, I have to have the exact perfect angle so that they can't get by me and score. When I see a baseball get hit and I line myself up to catch it directly, everything I've done to become good at my center has colored everything I do in my physical abilities. And it's not a lot of movements, but it took a long time to get it right. So plenty of movements, fancy kicks. If you can kick a pop can off the top of my head, I'm impressed, and I don't want you to kick me in the head. It's clear. I just don't think that those are necessarily useful kicks. Maybe it'll help your balance, being able to throw those big kicks. Personally, I've learned to use my balance just fine with very subtle low kicks, feet trap feet, hands trap hands. Keep it simple, keep it direct. Another thing, a problem with martial arts is self-defense. Well, at what time does self-defense become self-defense? Well, when they strike you first. Wait a second. I'm a pretty big guy, actually. I'm almost 200 pounds. I'm 6 feet plus. A lot of people are smaller than me, and they're gonna have to take on people who are bigger than them. So I, as a weaker person, have to wait for them to attack me? No way. No way. Now, being really good at Wing Chun will mean that you can be patient, and more often than not, you're gonna wait for them to make the first move because you feel confident. But no, if you see a chance to win and you are under genuine threat, you take the chance to win. You don't overcomplicate with 15 moves. You make 1, 2, and you try to get the advantage and you try to win as fast as you can because you're scared for your life. So I don't buy into self-defense. I'm perfectly fine with being offensive if I know that the situation is not going to get better and I don't have a choice. So, one example, 5 years ago, I was sitting, and there's a whole story behind it, but this drunk gold miner started walking from the road towards me, yelling, get up, stand up and face me. And I waited to the last second, and then I stood up and I took him out. Because you're not gonna yell stand up at me and then I'm gonna stand up and be like, okay man, let's not do this, and then wait for him to punch me. No way. I didn't actually use my fist on him. I don't need to. Still took him down, still won, still ended the situation fast. I was offense first. I wasn't any more punishing than I had to be to achieve victory. So I didn't overbeat him. I didn't I just solved the problem, right? But as he's 6 feet away yelling, stand up. Well, once you're doing that, you've told me that a fight's now happening, that there's no way I'm getting out of it, that if I stand up, you're just gonna try to sucker punch me somehow. Fine, I'll stand up. Learn your lesson. 5-second Wing Chun lesson, buddy. So I don't believe in self-defense. I don't believe in extra movements. I believe in simplicity. I believe in directness. I believe in positioning, angling, softness, sensitivity, footwork, my center line, striking hard out of it. I believe in no-handedness. I believe in no school, no teacher, no particular way. My Wing Chun is a choice that I'm going to stick with. It embodies everything that I need in a system for my daily life, for my fighting. I don't believe that you should have to pay tons of money to become a black belt. You're buying your way in to the upper ranks when you do that. So in Wing Chun, there's no belt. And you're gonna say, Joey, how's your Wing Chun? And I'm gonna say, lately, I don't know, let's touch hands. And we're gonna touch hands, and we're gonna roll hands, and we're gonna find out which one of us, as we're feeling each other, has got a better sense of center line, he's got a better softness, he's got a better reaction time, he's got just enough energy, but not too much, just enough to meet how much they're giving. Learn all that sensitivity. We get super soft. We get super simple. We don't participate in mixed martial arts tournaments because mixed martial arts wants us to have 3 arts. If you ever see a guy who claims he's Wing Chun in mixed martial arts, it's always his number 3, and he's sloppy, and basically all he's good at is throwing some chains. He throws that on as his 3rd thing in mixed martial arts. There's no Wing Chun guys in mixed martial arts. It's not a sport. Wing Chun is not a military tradition. It's a one-on-one system for fighting, moving, living, breathing, considering, contemplating your behavior. Wing Chun can give us so much. Another problem is animals. Like, let's see how your crane style does against my moose style. You know, we're not animals. I want a martial art that emphasizes a scientific approach to the ergonomics of the human body. How do we actually move? How is the most efficient way of movement? You know, some of the scientific things that you'll find in Wing Chun are like the center line between me and you is the straightest line. I mean, that's not arguable. The straightest line between you and me is a direct line. So a big part of our philosophy is based on angles. Another very useful angle that you'll find in my knees, my feet, in my arms are the 45-degree angles. 45-degree angles they're very strong. It's like a buttress of a building. I'll make a video called The Rule of 45s. 45-degree angles in the human body do not bend easily. I don't need to use strength to stop someone from pushing my arm in when it's at 45. When it comes in a little bit too much, it gets weak. If it's out a bit too much, it gets weak. The rule of 45s. Just basic things within the human body. From softness comes explosive power. You don't tense your body. You keep soft because out of softness comes explosiveness. I don't like the idea of animal forms. Although if I was to pick an animal, I'm a bobcat. I'm a solitary creature. That's what Wing Chun in many ways is. I tiptoe through the forest like a cat. I don't necessarily move too fast all the time, but I'll move fast for brief moments. Get my grounding, look around, head up on a swivel, looking behind me, looking above me, just being aware, having my head up, being aware, looking around, emphasizing that greater sensitivity. Another martial arts problem. I look at the eyes. Well, I look at the chest. Well, I look at the hands. Personally, I look at nothing. I take what Miyamoto Musashi said very seriously. Look both near and far at the same time. Narrow your eyes, go slightly out of focus, and then you can see everything happening at once around you. If you focus in, like my cat's outside cleaning his hands, I focus in on him, I can't see the camera. But if I focus at nothing, I can see my hands moving in the camera. I can see him moving. I mean, if you're more comfortable looking at the eyes or the hands or this or that, but I try to see far and near simultaneously. I try to see everything happening at once and not focus on one thing. And then I try to direct where I want things to go. Anyways, this has been my video on the problem with martial arts. If you think that, I'd love to have some support on Patreon. Subscribe, hit thumbs up. I'm just out here for the winter at home looking for something to do and just talking weather alone and singing songs and all that isn't necessarily enough for my creative interests. So I'd like to make my channel just, more of a blog in between radio shows. Don't forget to watch the radio show this week, 7 p.m. Pacific time on this channel. I'm Joey Only. If you would like to see more videos on martial arts, please let me know because I'd be happy to keep talking my philosophies. I hope that whatever style or system you use, or if you have no system, that you will think about these things at least and consider them, take them seriously, realize some of the shortfalls within your system, try to address them, and try to make yourself better at whatever you do. And if you want to learn Wing Chun, come stay at the lodge here with me and let's touch hands. I'll teach you I'll teach you the basics at least.